It's the middle of the night, and I've just woken up. I'm probably screaming, clutching at the air. Is there somebody there? I'm drenched in sweat. I want to spend the next 15, 20 minutes talking to you about why. Specifically, this is our menu for today. There are two things I need to tell you about Rovio. Imagine this is a rewarded ad. It works best that way. Then I have 4 more things about Rovio. We're going to have a discussion about Thelonious Monk. Then we're going to talk about the opposite of Marmite, guns, booze, Japan, and how I failed each and every one of your mothers. It's exactly what you'd predict. 2 things about Rovio. First is this. I think this is a moment where I would just like to be proud of Rovio, for that is crazy. That means that every single man, woman, and child on the whole planet has downloaded a Rovio game, except for the ones that haven't. It's definitely a moment to be proud of, but it's a hell of a lot of downloads. Obviously, we also count the ones we delete them immediately. Secondly, this. I don't know if any of you have seen, but recently we did a completely insane but rather brilliant piece of hookup marketing with Iron Maiden. Everyone had been waiting, obviously, for the Angry Birds Iron Maiden mashup. They were like, come on, when's it coming? That was very successful, and we now have the NFL as our next partner. Super Bowl obviously coming up. This starts tomorrow in Angry Birds 2 and Angry Birds Evolution. And there's a little tiny detail which I really appreciate about this, which is, this is Super Bowl 52. And Angry Birds was the 52nd game that Rovio made. So I think there's a really beautiful little touch of history in there. So, a year ago, I came here. Actually, I was upstairs then. It was more important, I was in room 1. But I was in room 1, and I announced that we were going to start a studio here in London. And at the time, I said that it was the culture of that studio was going to be an enormously important part of what we were doing. It's a kind of weirdly artificial thing, starting a new studio in an existing company. It's not quite a startup, it's something a little bit different. And you have to sort of inject this pre-existing culture into the environment, which is kind of hard. We wanted to bring the best of what I'd learned in Rovio, and I was VP of product over there. I wanted to bring the best of that Nordic working culture over, which means respect for the individual, it means respect for family life, it means commitment to diversity. It means wearing slippers in the office. It means being in perpetual darkness. And it means making every meal into a buffet. These are the important things about Finnish culture, certainly. And we wanted to bring those over, which meant that we don't crunch. It means that we offer flexible working conditions. And it means that we have a commitment to diversity. Now, this is the state of Rovio. This is the state of Rovio right now. We have 400 people. 300 of those work specifically in games, 150 of them work directly in development. The average age is 35, which I think I'm quite impressed by how large that number is for game development. We have 37 different nationalities, which is, seriously, I didn't know there were 37 countries. Apparently there are. Apparently there's even more. And 28% of us are angry, and 72% of us are sassy. Those boys and girls. 28% is not bad, I don't think, but obviously we can do much better, and we want to. Now, when we first started, and by we I mean me and Will Luton sitting there at the front, we started talking about the kind of culture that we specifically wanted to create. We wanted to make something that embraced diversity. And it embraced diversity in more than one sense. It embraced the kind of like identity diversity, for sure. My clear manifestation of every conceivable kind of privilege. It was a kind of like answer to that in some respects. But it was also about the kind of cognitive neurodiversity that I believe is exactly the fanciest word you can use to describe what we were after. And the thing about doing that is that what you're expressly saying is that you want to find a group of people who don't agree with each other. And then you want to get them to agree with each other and make a product. And that is going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a more difficult job. If all the people that you have in your studio are very similar to each other, have very similar experiences, similar backgrounds, think in similar ways, then your life is going to be a hell of a lot easier, but you're also going to have a hell of a lot smaller palette with which to paint your masterpiece. In the world now of mobile games, of free-to-play mobile games expressly, which is what we make, it's really hard to make a game that's going to break out. It's really, really difficult. I think in the room there are actually some of the people who made the most recent one I can think of, which is Golf Clash. Well done if you're here. It's really, really difficult. You're going to have to make something different. There's that saying, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always had. And that is very true of the video game industry. We're not very much about, like, let's bring in some people who haven't done this before. Walking into an interview, having not made a game before, means you're not going to get the job. And it means that we end up with a lot of people who are very similar experience-wise and passion-wise. And trying to break out of that is a brilliant way of getting some new ideas into the room. But it's hard. You have to embrace that complexity. You have to accept it up front. And you have to understand that it's going to take up some of your time. Who's that? It is Thelonious Monk. It is specifically Thelonious Sphere Monk. His middle name was Sphere. How did his parents know he was going to be a massively famous and influential jazz musician when he just came out screaming? Thelonious Monk said one of the things I think that I absolutely love. There's a quote from him which is, "The genius is the one who's most like themselves." And to me this is extremely important. Again, if you're trying to make a game that's going to be one of, I mean, how many games are there on the App Store now? What, 1 million or 20 million or 100 billion games? And you're like, well, we're going to make one of the best 20 to 50? Yeah? That's what we're going to do. We're going to do better than 100 billion minus 20 to 50 people. You're going to have to make something that is very clearly itself. And the point of this is, when you're sitting there with this group of people who are different, who've got different backgrounds, different thoughts, aren't thinking the same way, there's a temptation at least to expect that what you'll get is, I want white, I want black, let's do grey. Ah, grey. Everyone's favourite colour, you'll definitely get to the top of the charts with grey. No, the solution is, well, what about if we do green? How about blue, turquoisey, bluey, yellow. Yellow? Yellow. That's my art director nodding at. So definitely yellow. We're good with yellow. And this is the point. One of the things that we studiously avoid in all of our discussions in the studio is compromise, is splitting the difference, is saying like, well, we'll go, okay, we'll do that. No. When there's any kind of like unsurety, keep looking, keep searching, keep finding until you've got the thing that you really need, the thing that's different, that everybody is happy with. Because unless you're willing to go that distance, then what you're going to end up with is a kind of mush, rather than something that is unbelievably itself. Doesn't mean you will succeed, of course, but it raises the chances significantly. And then, in a situation where you have a bunch of people who all think very differently, who all have very different backgrounds, who all have this diversity of thought, the other thing you're going to have to be is tolerant. You have to be tolerant of difference. If you've got different people, you need to have a group of people who are, I believe the word gets used a lot at the moment, is emotionally intelligent. Not something that I was born with a lot of. I've tried my best to learn it. And this is about being kind. It's about being kind when people have ideas you don't believe in. It's about like trying to find those new ways of doing stuff and trying to be kind to each other and possibly even more importantly, kind to yourself. It's very easy in this business to get angry with yourself as much as it is to get angry with other people. This is a very demanding environment that we're all in. And being kind to yourself is as important as being kind to other people. So you need a group of people who are tolerant, who accept that their life is going to be complicated, where they have chosen a harder path, and understand that they're also not going to be able to compromise, that they're going to have to find great solutions. Once you've got that, I think you've got the start of a wonderful culture. And this is also something that we discuss an awful lot in our studio. Is less more? Is more less? I'm dressed kind of atypically, I think, for this room, I would say. Not entirely uniquely, but kind of atypically. Nobody dresses like this and makes games. This game development does not happen. Nobody has ever developed a game in a pinstripe suit. This just literally never happened, right? And it's just this idea that in our culture, a lot of the time we go like, we've got to make work fun, because it's millennials. They won't come unless there's a pool table on the ceiling and everyone's got their own horse. They just won't come. I'm not interested. It's like, unless work is fun, I don't know, is that true? There are an awful lot of things that we do when we build our studios that are very exclusionary. They're very saying like, like, are you like us? Are you like us? Because look, here are the things that will tell you. This is something we discuss a lot in our office. We have disagreements about this, which are fine, as I hopefully have already indicated to you. A lot of fine disagreements happen. Nerf gun. My wife, Naomi, my wife, works in public policy consultancy, right? Her job is the diametric opposite of mine. I asked her how many Nerf guns there were in her office, and I was astonished to discover there aren't any. This is the point that when you walk into a video game studio, it's like a bit like being in a toy shop in a lot of cases. It's like super exciting, and there's lots of bright colours, and there's guns and spikes on everything. But at the same time, I think it's sending out some messages, isn't it? It's definitely, there are some messages in that. Drinking. Beer fridges. I'm very sorry, by the way. I didn't know you were going to talk about beer fridges. I'm not, Annette, specifically attacking you here. And in fact, this isn't necessarily, none of this is a comment on what you should and shouldn't do. They're just things to think about. Beer fridges. There's lots of, if you've got a beer fridge in the office, it's telling people things. It's saying to them like, hey, why don't you stay a little bit longer and have a drink? It'd be nice. Why don't you, oh, are you pregnant? No, you're not in the gang, you can't be with us. And, oh, do you have kids and have to go home? Do you live a long way away? Are you over the age of 27? Is this it? We talk a lot about like not crunching, about trying to make the industry grow up a bit. And I think a lot of that is actually, it's not adding stuff, it's actually taking things away. The fewer things that you have to agree on as a group, the easier it is to have a very diverse group of people, because they don't all have to, as well as coming to work in a video game place, also have exactly the same view on The Last Jedi, and also agree that yes, definitely subtitle, not dubbed, so on and so forth. These extra things you're putting in the way make it harder and harder for you to have a truly different bunch of people making a truly different, interesting, new kind of experience. Interestingly, in our studio, there are two very strong views on whether or not we should have a beer fridge. We currently don't, but that's not to say we won't in the future. The person who thinks that we should most strongly is teetotal, and the person who thinks that we shouldn't most strongly is me, and I'm drunk all the time, including now. So I think there's two pieces of Japanese philosophy, which I'm sure all of you have heard before, and I apologise about how trite this is. I just know it's going to be trite, but I think they're really, really, really valuable things that I have learned to adhere to. And they are kintsugi, which some of you definitely have heard of. You smash pottery, and then you fix it with gold. And that is very much what building a studio is about, right? Building a culture. It's the fact that it's not about whether or not you make mistakes and break things and people are like, oh, and crying and running around and everything's on fire. What's important is the fix. What's important is what happens next. It's not a lot of building great culture, building a team, bringing people together is about like everything going wrong and then you fixing those things and pulling people together. So always valuing the fix over being paranoid about making mistakes is very much the way to think about these things. And the second of these is wabi-sabi. A tiny micro nod. This is like a Finnish audience. This is great. Everyone very quiet. Don't look at me. No. Wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is actually an aesthetic, and it's this idea that nothing is finished, nothing is complete, nothing is perfect. Everything is a process. It gets used a lot to talk about agile production techniques, which is pretty obvious, right? But I think also, and I think I'm reflecting directly what Erin was saying earlier, that one of the most important things about culture is this is a process. A culture is alive. It's not, you don't choose that, it's just the way it is. Constantly, every new person coming in, everything that happens will constantly change your culture. So you need to be aware of that, which means you need to firstly keep a very close eye on what it is. Secondly, it's always important, it's always worth giving your attention and your time to. And third, which is, even if things aren't going so well now, you can fix it. And then, kind of lastly, this is where I think it's important to admit to your failures. And here's my failure. Mum Jam. Did anybody here who heard about Mum Jam? You did. There are people who have heard of Mum Jam. Oh, that's so good. Right, kind of. So we announced Mum Jam. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is the fact that is gender diversity in the industry. I just am. I'm sorry to be a white, middle-class, hugely privileged man saying that, but it's true. And the industry as a whole has this tendency to always address the issue of gender primarily by saying it's education, right? It's education. It's like we've got to go and talk to young women and we've got to make sure that they're taking STEM subjects and that they're aware that video gaming is the thing that they can do. And that is true. But it also a little bit kicking the can down the road, maybe slightly. If you're talking to a 14-year-old and I need an art director, I don't. If I need an art director, she's there, I don't. And they're going to be, I know how old, significantly older than 14, then it's going to take a really long time for that to happen. We're not going to wait 20 years. I want to do something now. And there are a lot of, there are surely women who have left the video game industry to have kids and not come back. There's definitely a thing that's happened. And it's certainly not something that we make easy. Childcare provision in the video game industry is not fantastic. Support for family life in the video game industry is not fantastic. And so something that we really, really wanted to do was point at this. Not least because if you are a 14-year-old young woman right now looking at the video game industry as somewhere to join, and you are like, they work what hours? They give, I can't, how am I? The idea that there's some support for you throughout your career and that you're going to be looked after is important. And we're not very good at this. So we decided that the thing we were going to do to try and draw attention to this was do Mum Jam. Mum Jam was a game jam with free childcare. So it's like, come along, we'll look after your kids for nothing, and you can do a game jam. And we announced it, and everybody loved it. There was an article in gamesindustry.biz by the wonderful James Batchelor. Twitter was like, this is the best thing that's literally ever happened. And we got all kinds of props for it, and it was great. And I walked around, lightly glowing, for a few days. 4 people signed up. 4 people signed up. We had 5 days left, and there were 4 people that signed up. So we were like, hey everybody, come to, we're gonna come to Mum Jam. We're gonna delay this slightly. So we did that. And it feels really bad that we got all this wonderful PR and we didn't do it. We just didn't do it. It never happened. It's never happened. We think there's 2 reasons for this. The first of which is that it was called Mum Jam when really it should have been called Family Jam. Anyone could come. You don't have to be a mum. You could be, well, so firstly, a dad. That was kind of fine. And secondly, you got a bit obsessed. I think tunnel vision might have come in. And secondly, it was just open to everybody. Plus, if you are the parent of a young in a young family, you're probably not going to want to go to a game jam, even if there is free childcare. It's just, and it also had the really unpleasant side effect that we didn't realise at the time of basically going, oh, childcare, that's what women do. Couldn't have been more further away from the truth. Now, the end of this story I'm kind of pleased about, not least because I've literally just run out of time, so it's important that I finish it, is that we don't know what to do next. In the true spirit of Wabi Sabi, but not in the spirit of Kintsugi, do we want to do something with this? Yes. Are we going to hold some kind of event to bring more attention to this? Yes. What is that going to be? I don't know. And I think it's important, again, in the spirit of good culture, to know that what you care about and the direction you're heading is important. You will fix it in the end. So yeah, that's what we've learned. Rovio is really great, can't deny that, right? Embrace complexity, embrace it, enjoy it, it's good. You're gonna have it. Avoid compromise, because that's bad. Be tolerant, be kind. Think about doing less with your studio. Think about maybe having a great pension scheme and good dental care. So an idea, value the fix, and I am very sorry, all mums and all dads. And that is the end.